In yesterday's video, we went over several setups that were coalescing for Bitcoin. In today's video, we will follow up on these ones, which ones have actually fired off, and a couple of new ones that we did not speak about in yesterday's video that are perhaps of relevant interest as well. I want to state that this is massively focused on the higher term timeframes, not on the lower term timeframes. Although yesterday we did say Bitcoin could very easily get a short-term pullback. I mean, it did pull back from about 100,000 down to 97, but do understand that as long as Bitcoin is below this last 102 high right here or 103 high right here, depending upon whether you're looking at spot or CME, there is still potential for, a decent pullback because we do not see a higher low on the daily time frame just yet. In fact, we don't even see a higher high just yet as well, but I do look at this as very likely to resolve to the upside. Other than that, I should let you know that if you're watching this video later on in the day, this is being recorded during a live stream. So if you want to join on in later, you can always, do the like button and hit the subscribe as well if that's relevant to your interests. All right. So first things first, I wanted to follow up on the RSI EMA setup that we looked at on yesterday's video. This was pertaining to the 2-day time frame. The 2-day time frame. Yes, the 2-day time frame. The setup is extremely simple. 2-day RSI above the exponential on a closing basis, open along. When it closed below, closed along. If you would have done that throughout the full history of Bitcoin, you would have had these results right here. You would have won your trades about 35.5% of the time, but your profit factor is very large, I would say. I do want to omit these first few years of history over here, just because I think that I think that it's probably painting a better picture than what it actually is. So I'm going to go for just the last 10 years of history, and we can see the stats definitely do adjust, but they are still, at least in my opinion, quite nice here. Going into the performance summary, keeping in mind that this strategy has indeed already fired off, the average winning trade has returned 21.5%, the average losing trade losing 369, and the average amount of bars in winning trades is 12. So, we can start to come up with areas of interest to the upside, as well as dates, because this one, again, has officially fired off. And what would it look like? Well, I guess 20% to the upside puts Bitcoin at around 119,500 to 120,000 bucks. Again, these are averages; they're not fucking exact numbers. There's going to be some variance, obviously. And 12 bars, I think it was, would be obviously 24 days. So that would put that would put us on a timeline, around first week of February, perhaps, which is what we have been on this channel. Late January to early February is where things likely do move outside of this range. But moving on I should also add, Bitcoin, this setup obviously can fail. And if it does, it probably happens sooner rather than later, as you can see on all of these last few trades right here that we've seen since November 28th, which have all been losses. We're pretty much only open for, 2 to 4 days at a time. I mean, this one took 2 closures, so that's 4 days. The other one's just taking 2 days. So yeah, if it is going to fail, you'll know very, very soon, meaning that if Bitcoin just essentially fails to come back down and close below this, the moving average on the 2-day RSI, then, the setup is still valid. But moving on from there and following up on the next setup, the 6-hour time frame setup, the silver trend right here. This one is also fired off as of, this one actually fired off on Wednesday. So we did cover this one on yesterday's video, but I do want to take another stab at it just to remind ourselves kind of the greater picture, everything that's kind of working with each other. And we can see right here that, again, a very simple strategy, very fucking simple strategy. Yes, you can figure out, if you have half of a brain, you can figure out a million ways to optimize this. But the strategy is this: 6-hour silver cross, which is the 21 versus the 55 exponential moving average to the upside, open along, cross below, or cross in the other direction, close that long. If you would have done that throughout the last, I think, about 10 years for Bitcoin, you would have had, again, a very low hit rate, 37.5%, but very high profit factor compared to that, and a nice equity curve over time. The average winning trade for this setup returning about almost 30%, the average losing trade losing just under 5%. Again, it is more likely to fail, to be fair, but you do have to wonder, when we see all of these setups going on in the background, is it, are these all going to agree with each other at the same time? Probably yes, if that's the way that it's going to work out. This one, however, going for a much more long-term move compared to the last 2-day time frame setup that we looked at, where we do see the average amount of bars in winning trades is actually 162. 162 bars on a 6-hour time frame is how many days? I mean, Again, these are averages, but I'm curious where that kind of put us. Yeah, that puts us in kind of the third week of February area. So that's going for a little bit more of a long-term move. And again, as long as these two moving averages right here are crossed in the upside direction, that being the 21 above the 55, that general trade remains open. So like I said, Bitcoin at some point is going to come back down and set in a higher low on a daily time frame. If it does do it from its current area right here, you could still have these setups work out even if it does have a pullback down to like 95 or 96,000 bucks. That'll actually still kind of work out in that same direction. But moving on from there, I wanted to bring up a new setup, or it's not necessarily new. We've spoken about this before on the channel, but not pertaining to current price action, which is the 5-day 5 exponential moving average setup. Again, super fucking simple setup right here. I want all of the setups that I show on YouTube to be super fucking simple so that people can follow along with them, not because people are retarded, but because it makes things easier. And the 5-day setup is simply this: 5-day closure above the red moving average, which is just a 5 exponential, open along, close below the 5 exponential, closed along. And the purpose of this strategy is to catch on to long-term major trending moves. All major trending moves in Bitcoin's history have begun and ended on the 5-day 5 exponential. For example, the last major one that we saw opened up over here at about 62,850, closed somewhat recently in late December at about 92,500 bucks. Also, this particular setup got the 2 major trades of 2024, or 3 major trades of 2024. There was just 2 major ones, and it got both of those. The second one was the January to April rally right here, 50% rally. And then the one before that was actually late 2023, similar sort of 50% gainer right there as well. Anyways, this one did fire off with the last 5-day closure, which was last night or 2 nights ago, I suspect. Like last night or the night before that, whatever it was, it's fired off. And here would be the full stats if you were to play this setup throughout the full history of Bitcoin. Again, I do think that this is massively influenced by the earlier days of Bitcoin. So if we do get rid of that, I'm curious to see what we will see, although I already kind of know, but the hit rate actually does go up a fair bit to close to 41%. And the profit factor is still very high, I would say, with the average winning trade returning about 35.5%, the average losing trade losing about 5.5%, and the average amount of bars in winning trades is 10. So 10 on a 5-day, that's easy math. That's 50 days. So again, that puts us into like end of February. Perhaps we can start to come up with some projections if this is going to work out. Again, needs to remain above the 5 exponential. And what would 30+% look like, to the upside? I mean, that would put Bitcoin at around 130 to 135,000 bucks by end of February. On top of this setup, of course, we do also have the 5-day setup that we spoke about over here, which is looming as of right now. It's a looming setup. It's not quite there just yet, but anytime we see extremely low volatility represented by the BBWP indicator on the 5-day time frame, there is the potential for an absolutely massive move. And just put things into perspective, these sort of moves typically come to the tune of like 40%. And that's both the average and the median, which is actually very interesting in my opinion. Now, this setup is only green lighted when the 5-day volatility starts to actually expand. Right now, it is still kind of contracting, actually. I suspect that we won't actually have true volatility expansion until Bitcoin is above the last local high, which was about 102,000 and change. But if and when this does start to expand, I mean, it will start to expand, then the direction of the 5-day stochastic oscillator has had an extremely high correlation to the major direction of Bitcoin. In this case, we can see the 5-day stochastic oscillator is currently down. I mean, it's currently down. So this would be technically a downside setup if it did fire off exactly right now. But you can see that the stochastic momentum pivot is where it's almost directly in alignment with the last major local high, which is 102,200 or 325. So if Bitcoin does close above there in the next 3.5 days, you're very likely to see volatility expansion. And then at that point, anytime that we've seen this setup, which there's been 16 prior ones in Bitcoin's history, every time it actually has not failed once. Every time it has it has gone on to have a pretty nice positive gaining, I guess, stint, if you want to call it that. Now, am I suggesting that this setup's going to work out for forever? No, it's not going to have 100% hit rate for forever. I mean, I don't think anything will. But it is relevant as it is still relevant to my interests, even as it is. Looking at the average return here and median return, basically both at 42, and the average amount of time taken about 34 days. There is a lot of variance in the time taken, by the way. Have seen these take up to about 60 days to the next major high. But again, 35 days from today would put us where? End of February. And if Bitcoin were to go for one of these monstrous moves, I mean, 40%-ish puts Bitcoin at 140,000. So I'm coming up with areas now of interest for the future, assuming that these setups just do not get invalidated, which we've gone over criteria for all of these prior ones. But it's good to see that all of these things are kind of working hand in hand. Now, I also want to put that into context, of course, for January monthly returns. Now, January is, I think it's safe to say January very likely does close positively. And we do actually have stats for, what the average returns are in January for positive closing months, which is about 23%. The median return was about 1360. Oh my God, my dyslexia is actually insane. 1635. I am the retarded person here. Anyways, when I go back into it over here, we already obviously have the open for January. What would 20% plus look like on price? That put Bitcoin on new all-time highs, 112,000. So perhaps that's an end of January target. If it goes for, closer to the median, 16% puts Bitcoin basically around the current all-time high at 108,000 bucks. So, anywhere between these two numbers by end of month would really set up and green light all the other things that we're looking at, down the road, basically with a major area of interest around 130,000. 240,000, probably sometime around the end of February. And then we come back to it after that. Is there anything else that I want to speak about right here? Yes, of course. We have the most important setup of them all, the moon phases. The moon phases have come back again, and they're saving your crypto coins. Have fun with your crypto coins and other things you also are playing with, says our paraphrased from our current or incoming president. Either which way you look at it, again, I know people fucking hate this, but it is interesting, at least in my opinion, because statistics are statistics. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And in this case, if you would have just opened along every time that there was a full moon, closed that long every time that there was a new moon, you would have had these stats for the past, I think almost full history of Bitcoin, or at least 10 years, about 58% strike rate, which I think is probably better than, I don't want to denigrate anyone out there, but I think it's better than most people, to be fair. It's like the moons are better than most people, most logical people at trading, I guess. Anyways, the average winning trade for this, 14.5% almost. The average losing trade about 7%. This one already obviously fired off, and that was on Monday, which was essentially the low. It's not essentially low. That was the low. That was the low. And of course, that gives us a time and returns to kind of look at. If this one does happen to the upside, 14% to the upside would put Bitcoin where? 108,000 bucks. And 15 days, because all these signals right here take 15 days for the moon strategy, would put us where? That would put us the last couple days of January. Again, that goes hand in hand with the prior stats that we were just looking at right here. It's not to say that it's 100% guaranteed, but when you do see a lot of things align with each other, I think it does increase the probability of them happening. Even though I don't actually, I wouldn't have literal proof of that, but that would be my intuition. Anyways, that's what I have. That's what I have as far as setups goes. I did want to bring up a couple last minute things here though, just because, one, if you're watching this video at a later time, please consider subscribing. You can get these videos each and every day. Well, maybe not a live stream, but you can get a normal video every day. And then also the last thing here is Coinbase. Coinbase is very interesting to me as well, because I want to see Coinbase generally be good as long as Bitcoin is good. And well, it's almost exactly as we said for this month. Comes down to the red 5 exponential moving average and then has a nice bounce up. I mean, as long as it's above there, I treat this as an uptrend in motion. same shit as Bitcoin right here. And you can see now with Bitcoin back above 100,000 bucks, the 5 exponential is nearly pulled to the bottom wick of this month now. So that fulfills my conditions as far as what we wanted to see for a correction during this month. And, if you're going to be bullish, I think there's good reason to be. Obviously, be aware of your risk, be aware of what can happen. Again, Bitcoin could come down to 95,000 bucks and still be a higher low in the short term. It is quite common to pull back after retesting a prior local high. So I wouldn't rule that out. But the long-term sort of trajectory is seeming to get really nailed in here, which is, good to see, at least in my opinion. Anyways, before I shut this video off, I should also let you know that I brought back the Blofin link in the description below. Blofin is an exchange. It's a no KYC exchange, which I know a lot of people are interested in for who knows what reason. And more importantly, this specific link will get you 15% cash back on your trading, meaning that you essentially get a 15% fee reduction, which is actually, at least in my experience, very, very nice, because any sort of fee reduction just means more money in your pocket. So if you're looking to lock that in for the lifetime of your account, you can just grab the link. You don't have to even use the account, but if you grab it, then you potentially have that option in the future. And I should also let you know my plans for it. Right now, it's a 15% cashback. If you remember when I first brought this one out, it was just 10%. Then it went to 15%. I think if we can get more people on the link, then I can go to my representative at Blofin and say, how about 20%, sir? How about 20% cash back, actually? And of course, it'll, just like the last one, apply retroactively to anyone who gets on as well. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll shut this video off at that moment. That's enough shilling for one day. And perhaps we'll see you at a live stream in the future. And we'll continue on now with the live stream. So take care and much love.